Good evening, everyone. This is High Point Mayor Jay Wagner. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and for those listening online, thank you for tuning in with us. I really appreciate y'all coming out. This is our High Point City Council regular meeting for February 20th, 2023. To begin the meeting, I'll ask everyone to please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item on our agenda tonight is a proclamation regarding the Montford Point Marines of High Point. And to read the proclamation, I would like to turn the meeting over to our resident Marine veteran, Victor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I read the proclamation, I just want to say, Marines, we're big on history. We love learning our history. And I read about the Montford Marines. I've been to the museum. I never thought in my life I'd get to meet any of them. They're like heroes to us, and so it's really special that the committee that put this together looped me in to help do that. We've got a lot of hours in Zoom and emails and phone calls and all this other stuff to put this together, and we've had an absolute blast doing it. And we have a lot of fun laughs and stuff, but we're excited because every one of us is passionate about how important the Montford Marines is and to this country, and especially the ones from High Point to us. So. Proclamation reads, whereas the opportunity for African Americans to enlist and serve the United States Marine Corps arose in June 1941 when President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 8802 prohibiting racial discrimination in the United States defense industry. And whereas, despite discrimination and segregation, approximately 20,000 African American men completed recruit training and became known as the Montford Point Marines. And whereas the Montford Marines displayed valor and exemplary performance during battles such as Helio Battle, Iwo Jima, the Chosin Reservoir Battle, and whereas the Public Law 112-59 was passed by the United States Congress and signed by President Barack Obama in 2011 to award the Congressional Gold Medal to honor the Montford Point Marines, and whereas the Montford Point Marines of High Point, North Carolina, assisted in the advancement of civil rights by paving the way for thousands of others to follow despite facing adversity and hardships. Their strength and perseverance to serve our nation embodied the true spirit of patriotism. Therefore, as a grateful city, I, Jay Wagner, Mayor of the City of High Point, urge the citizens of High Point, North Carolina to join me in recognition of the contributions of the Montford Point Marines of High Point, North Carolina to our nation and the communities in which they reside.
We'd love to have y'all come forward. I know we have a copy of the resolution for everyone, and I know the staff would like to get some photos, so I'll meet you down there. Come on up. I think Jake has got a copy for the families. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna slide you forward. There we go. I'm behind you. You can help me hold it. Yeah, we may have to make another row.
I was going
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if I could, just.
Before we move on.
Yeah, before we move on. I am very proud of this day. While not from High Point, my grandfather-in-law, James Andrew Felton, served at Montford Point. And so it's just kind of full circle that I'm here today to see you all recognized. It's a very important part, as he produced the woman I married. So it's just a really great time, and I thank you all for being here. And I feel a kindred connection to you all. Even though I didn't have the pleasure to meet him, he passed before I had a chance to meet him. But my grandfather-in-law was a Montford Point Marine, and he was honored in 2015 with the recognition. So thank you all for being here. I'm greatly appreciated.
Okay. By the way, for those listening, all council members are present with the exception of Councilmember Britt Moore, who is not with us tonight. Is there someone from the Finance Committee who's going to be handling that agenda?
Yeah.
Councilman Jones, okay. So I'll now turn over the Finance Committee portion of our agenda to Councilman Victor Jones for presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, our Finance Committee met at our regular time last Thursday. We went through items 2023-085 through 2023-087. I present those items as a consent agenda.
Okay. These items have been presented as consent agenda items. Is there a second for their approval?
Second. Thank you.
Second from Councilman Holmes. Any discussion on any of the items? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. I think that's it for finance, Councilman Jones.
That's all.
Next on the agenda then are our Community Development Committee items. Councilmember Williams will handle those items. So I'll turn the meeting over to him.
Thank you, Mayor. On Tuesday, February 7th, we covered items 2023-059 through 056 under the consent agenda. I make a motion to approve those.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second to approve the Community Development Committee consent agenda items. Is there any discussion on any of the items? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. 8-0.
Mayor, under advisement of the staff, I make the motion to pull item, I'm sorry, let me make sure I get this correct. It is the item 2023-001, demolition of dwelling 2321, out of pending.
Okay, there's a motion to pull that item out of pending. Is there a second? Second.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion to pull that out of pending? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes and that item has been removed from pending.
All right, I will now then turn the floor over to Lori Loosemore, if you want to say anything before.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Excuse me, this was continued from the meeting on January 17th, 2023. And I'd spoken with Ms. Thomas a few times, but she has never submitted any type of final proposal of repairing the house, a timeline, or whether she's going to move forward with demolition. She still seemed to be, if I remember correctly, trying to get quotes for both, but she did know, she was sent a notification that this would be heard again tonight, and I did speak with her and advise her that on the phone as well. But since there's been no update officially in writing that she can commit to, I've just recommend we move forward with demolition.
Thank you, Laura. Is there any question for staff on this item? All right, is there anyone here to speak for or against this item? In that case, I make the motion to approve item 2023-001, demolition of dwelling 2321.
Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of the ordinance of demolition. Any discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you.
Laura.
Thank you. Next are the planning and development items. I'll be handling those. The first item is the initiation of zoning plan amendment for the Blair Coltrane House. Is there a staff member who's going to present on this item?
Very briefly, Herb Shannon with the Planning and Development Department. Staff is recommending City Council initiate a zoning map amendment of a 1.2 acre area along Underhill to support the goal of renovating the Blair Coltrane House. And this would also establish land area for a potential long-range project for a minor culture facility. So we're requesting you initiate that request so we can bring it forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council.
Any questions, staff? Seems pretty straightforward. Then I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve that item. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? And that motion passes unanimously. We have several items on for public hearing. We have two that are in pending that will need to come out. So I'll make, hello? Herb's jumping up. Am I doing something wrong?
No, you're fine.
Okay, all right. I see Herb jump up. I know there's trouble brewing. All right. I'll make the motion then to pull items 2022-557 and 2023-013 out of pending. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to pull those two items out of pending. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? And that motion passes. Mr. Shannon, do you have a preferred order to handle these public hearing items?
No.
Okay, is it all right with you if we then start with the AAA storage?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well then I will state that we're then now proceeding with zoning map amendment 22-24 involving AAA Storage Management LLC.
Yes, this is a request to rezone a 3.5 acre parcel located about 570 feet west of the East Chester Drive corridor and about 540 feet south of Willardary Road. The applicant's requesting rezoning of this parcel to expand allowable uses. This site was initially annexed and granted zoning approval in 2000. It was part of a larger 9-acre parcel. The front part of this development has developed with a multi-tenant use, 30,000 square foot facility, but the rear of the site is still undeveloped. In 2020, there was an amendment to expand allowable uses, and the applicant is once again requesting to expand allowable uses to allow an internal access self-storage facility. The prior zoning approval prohibited that use, but with the updated zoning ordinance from 2017, that use type has been further expanded to clarified intent and would be consistent with the East Chester Quarter Plan and the land use plan. That would be the only change to the prior conditional zoning ordinance, just to allow that one use. All of the previous standards, architectural standards, East Chester Quarter standards will still apply, and staff is supporting this request for rezoning. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this proposal at their November 2022 public hearing and recommended approval by a vote of 9-0. And included in your staff report is a consistency statement that the commission adopted for the council's consideration. That is a brief summary of this proposal. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Anyone have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Shannon. By the way, the public hearing is open on this item. Is there anyone from the applicant who'd like to speak? I see Ms. Stalder approaching.
My name is Judy Stalder, 3735 Admiral Drive here in High Point. Thank you for considering this. This is just to add one use of internal access storage. It'll look like an office building. It'll generate very little traffic. The typical residential user visits once or twice a month. We'd like to thank you for allowing us to continue this while we worked on due diligence for the property, and we'd like to thank staff for assisting us in getting the answers we needed before moving forward. And so tonight we ask for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stalder. Is there anyone else present who would like to speak for or against this item? Okay, thank you. Anyone have any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. All right. Well, then I will make a motion for approval of this item, and I will adopt the consistency and reasonableness statement as stated by the Planning and Zoning Board. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval. Public hearing on this item is closed. And all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion is passed unanimously, 8-0. Next will be the Bricks and Beam LLC zoning map amendment 22-26 case.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is a request to rezone a 7.2 acre tract of land for redevelopment. This site's located within the core city along the west side of Green Drive between West Grimes and Taylor Avenue. The site currently contains 5 vacant industrial buildings of over 470,000 square feet. The initial phase of the redevelopment for this block for the applicant is looking at an event center, some warehousing, an office, and some year-round retail use. As some of those uses are not permitted in the current heavy industrial zoning, the applicant's requesting rezoning to the light industrial. I would note this is the beginning of a multi-year design project that the applicant's working on. They are in the process of doing a master plan for this entire block. So then once that plan is completed, there will probably be additional rezoning requests for this block. With the adoption of the current development ordinance 2017, and with implementation of many of the core city policies, this area and land uses we're taking another look at this area. Under the current LI zoning, a wider range of uses are permitted, and the HI zoning district is now specifically for those higher intensive noxious uses such as asphalt plants and landfills. So rezoning to LI will allow more development options for this site. Finally, this site is within an area that's noted as the Southwest area, study area for the Southwest area plan. That's a project staff will be working on in the next few years, but based upon preliminary evaluations in the scope of that plan, the area has been deemed appropriate for mixed industrial use, similar to that which you have at a high-end industrial park. And also with that, we anticipate that the amount of heavy industrial zoning in this area is going to be reevaluated with that study, along with the comprehensive plan, and a lot of that heavy industrial area will probably be recategorized. Thus, staff is recommending approval for rezoning the site to a light industrial district. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this proposal at their December public hearing and recommended approval, and including your staff report is a consistency statement that they adopted for council's consideration. Are there any questions of staff at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Public hearing is open. I see Beth Koontz has signed up to speak on this item. I believe she's probably representing the applicant, so. Ms. Koontz, good to see you.
Good to see you, Mayor Wagner, and members of council. My name is Beth Koontz. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Robertson, Hayworth, and Reese here in town. My address is 300 North Main Street, High Point. I don't have a lot to add to what Herb has just shared with you, except to say I do have an update on the middle piece of this block, which is not a part of your rezoning request tonight. But it is now under contract with my client, and we're anticipating that all of the properties in this block will be under Bricks and Beams ownership, probably summer of 2023, possibly the fall. And at that time, hopefully, latter part of 2023, early 2024, we should be coming back to you with a plan for the entire block. The LI zoning was suggested to us by the staff, and it was a great suggestion because it's going to let us go ahead and start developing the site, because it would have been a phased development anyway. So we hope that you're going to see it our way, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Anyone have any questions for the applicant? Thank you, Ms. Koontz.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who would like to speak for or against this item? Okay, hearing none, I will close the public hearing, and I'll make a motion for approval of this item, and I will adopt the consistency and reasonableness statement as stated in the staff report from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is there a second?
Second. Thank you.
Okay. There's a motion and a second for approval. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously, 8-0. There are several more items on for public hearing. My understanding is that the annexation case and zoning map amendment with regard to Carolina Income Properties 15 LLC is that they've asked us to continue that item, but I'll let Mr. Shannon.
Yes, the applicant is finalizing their required annexation exhibits, so we're requesting this item be continued to your March 20th public hearing for the annexation case 2207 and the zoning map amendment 2229.
All right. Then I'll go ahead and make a motion to place those two items in pending or to continue them. Well, don't need to put them in pending. We'll just continue the two items for our March 20th meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second to continue those two items. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously, 8-0. Next on the agenda is our text amendment 2205, which I believe is our signed ordinance.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, good evening, and council members as well. My name is Chris Andrews with the Planning and Development Department. From staff's perspective, this is kind of a momentous event in that we can actually bring forward to you our sign ordinance. These amendments have taken us far too long, precedes my time here, so we're working on about 4 years. I do want to take the time right now to recognize our department's former planning administrator, Heidi Galanti, who really shepherded the process. She's not here tonight. I know she's back in consultant form working for the city. So, but she was really kind of the chief shepherd of the project. And also want to thank our legal staff, especially Ms. McGuire, as well as our is on retainer the right word, but Pointer Spruill, outside counsel with Pointer Spruill that helped us a lot. The First Amendment and kind of legal landscape of signage is something that's continuously changing. So we had a lot of good help with this. So unless there's any questions of staff at this point, I want to just kind of give an overview of what we'll cover and then hopefully quickly summarize the changes that we've made with the amendments.
Please do.
Well, terrific. Let's see here. So tonight, I just want to give some objectives of what the sign ordinance rewrite was looking to accomplish, the amendment process, and the timeline that staff used to come to this final product. Some ordinance highlights, things that have changed, things that have maybe been reorganized, as well as the review and decision process, who reviewed this draft and how is it being approved. And I think this is an appropriate time to mention that really the outcome of this ordinance will not be something that council sees on a day-to-day basis. Well, you will see it when you walk or drive around town, but there won't be sign applications that are coming before this council. So this will mainly be things that city staff is looking at, unless it's a variance or related to historic preservation. So some objectives: we wanted to create user-friendly regulations, things that were clear and easy to understand. We wanted to update and modernize just with terminology, with how things are calculated. So we looked at other jurisdictions to make sure that we were, comparable to them. We wanted to use illustrations and graphics, so we included a number of photos, which is helpful to applicants. And then really the last, probably the most important thing, is that we wanted to ensure that our new ordinance is constitutionally sound. And like I said, there's some legal things in the last number of years that have kind of talked about content neutrality and a term called, you might hear, time, place, and manner, and really how do you create standards and regulations for signage. So we wanted to try to adhere to that as best we could. So this slide shows a kind of a timeline of the amendment process. It really started in 2017 when the city was adopting the new development ordinance. At that time, city staff, this predates my time with the department, but city staff kind of saw that, okay, signage is going to be a weighty topic, so let's take it out of the development ordinance revision process and tackle it separately. So that's what happened. And in 2018, that process really started. There were interviews, meetings, surveys that were sent out. Some of you may have been in those meetings. And what came of that were some reports from a consultant that kind of gave us a status of what the city sign ordinance, the kind of current conditions, and then some recommendations. And so in 2019, there was a public meeting kind of to get initial thoughts and perspective, and then staff took that time in between 2019 and 2022 to finalize the draft that's before you today. So within the amendment in your packet, there are really three main sections. Section 5.7, which is a portion of the development ordinance, that's the bulk of the amendments that are for consideration. Then there's Chapter 10, which is just another chapter in the development ordinance. This has all the definitions. It has all of the standards for measurement, and that's important for staff so that we can administer the ordinances as equally as possible. And then there are 10 other sections that have incidental changes that relate to signage. This might be accessory uses or temporary uses or nonconformities, which are the signs that might have been legal and meeting standards at one time, but because of changes over time, no longer meet the city standards. So we've tried to address all of those. This is an example, or not an example, this is the kind of table of contents of the amendment, and within section 5.7. So there's 16 subsections. This was a total rewrite, so there's not a strike through and underline. It's completely new. It's reorganized. We consolidated some sections. We created some new ones. We eliminated others. And we wanted to kind of move from general standards at the beginning and make them more specific as we went along. So we think the readability of it is better than what we have now. There were some of these new sections include illumination standards. When a sign consultant or property owner comes to the department to ask, where can I find these items? They were kind of spread out in different places. The Eastchester items, has a separate, signage has different standards in the Eastchester corridor, and that was in a different section. It wasn't very intuitive, so we tried to reorganize. So there were some general themes, general changes. Again, the most important is this idea that we're regulating signage based on the time, place, and manner of signage, and not based on the content, so not reading what's on the sign. We tried to make sure to communicate that this ordinance is applicable to signs that are legible or readable from the public right-of-way, so things that happen internally, maybe on a campus setting or some sort of development, are not included. We wanted to include clear language on when signage, if there's a demolished building or a business that ceases to be in existence, what happens with that signage, so we're not just left with kind of bandit signs throughout the city. Made clear that there are certain types of signs that are prohibited, as well as just some general, expanding on our general standards for signage. One fairly common section within the ordinance for folks who are calling in or businesses that are trying to promote themselves is a section that is proposed to be called signs that are allowed without a permit. Currently we have signs without a permit, and then we have signs that are exempt, and we figured we don't need two of those sections, so let's combine it. And this includes things like menu boards that you might see in kind of a pedestrian setting, weekend signs, which are fairly common with like open house, but again, you start getting into content, so weekend signs was a category that we came up with. So this is something that is definitely used on a frequent basis by citizens within the city. We still have our freestanding signage. There's not a ton that's added to this, but we do have some specialty signs, both in the freestanding as well as in the attached section. And those are, it's kind of like bonus signage, what we're calling an institutional banner, as well as light pole banners. We get a lot of requests from either religious institutions or schools, nonprofits to, hey, can we put up a banner? Can we promote our, fish fry or whatnot? And so finding a way to maybe permit the frame and then have the ability to change out those banners on a regular basis would be helpful. So that kind of summarizes freestanding signs. Attached signage, the city currently has a limit on the number of kind of elements of signage for attached signs, and we thought, why don't we just make it easy and go with the total square footage of signage? So we've made that much clearer. We changed the calculation for how much signage property owner is entitled to. Instead of the area of a facade, it's just going to be the width of your facade. And then we added some new sign types. Painted wall sign is one example that's kind of our, but it might be defined in a lot of other communities as a mural. So that was clear. That's something that the ordinance hasn't touched on and something we get a lot of questions about. And then, again, we added some specialty signs for attached signage. And within that section, again, these are bonus. It doesn't count against the property owner. So you have your normal just attached signage as well as these specialty signs. And that includes a blade sign that's kind of at a pedestrian level if you're walking maybe along Main Street or maybe in our mixed use area, just those pedestrian scale signs over the entrance of a building. Crown signs, which are at the top of buildings, might be more common on a taller building. Freestanding canopy signs, super graphics, which are very prevalent in the central business district for showrooms. So we have proposed those are bonus signs, but only in the central business district. And then I touched on the wall painted signs. That's the murals that we get a lot of questions about. So we feel good about adding those. Electronic sign standards is another section. These used to be in separate areas, so we've combined them just for kind of readability. And this includes our electronic changeable copy, which is just the text or graphics that change, as well as video signs. There's not a lot of video signs in the city, but those are only permitted in the central business district for market showroom uses. This is a new section that we wanted to address kind of the needs of institutional users within the city, so college campuses, the hospital system, really High Point Medical Center. And we were thankful for some of their help because they were actually going through a bunch of rebranding of their signs when whatever Wake Forest Baptist Health is called today. I know they've added a lot of terms, but so they have gone through and kind of rebranded their signage. So we got some feedback from them and actually made some changes before we went to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So that was good to hear from them. But again, this will give some institutions a bit, there's some kind of bonus signage in there. They can kind of move and shift things around as opposed to just a freestanding user. About two more sections here. This section is called limited duration signage. This used to be called special promotions. It's very difficult to define what is a special promotion as opposed to just any promotion. So staff wanted to eliminate that judgment from it. And this only includes temporary banners, inflatable signs, and pennants. You will notice that feather flags and the inflatable guy are not included in here. Air dancers, I think, is an industry term, but so those are not proposed to be permitted for these limited duration signs. And then currently, we allow those for 30 days, 3 instances per year. We looked at our peer cities kind of in the region, and most are at two instances per year. So we're proposing to go to 2 times per year. And what might be one of the most helpful changes in the ordinance is sign images by sign type. So we kind of have a directory of, what is what's a freestanding canopy sign, or what's a air-blown sign. We can actually point to them with graphics. That they're repeated as words, but they go hand in hand, and it's helpful to be able to actually point to an example. And quickly, in Chapter 10, just to give you an idea of how staff and users utilize the ordinance, we have the rules of measurement. So we've kind of shown when a sign permit is going to be submitted, this is what staff would expect the applicant, how they're determining what to submit and how to make their calculations. We wanted to make that measurement a little bit more lenient. Instead of, you can see the McDonald's on the right side, they've got arguably 3 signs. Well, instead of putting a limit on it, we just wanted to calculate the total area. And so we hope that by adding more graphics, it'll just add to the usability. Within the definitions, we kind of consolidated the definitions for signage. Instead of being in different areas, now they're kind of lumped together. We do that with a few other topics in the city's development ordinance. Tried to clarify existing definitions and then add ones that needed to be added. So there were some miscellaneous sections, as I mentioned before. These are all within the development ordinance, but in different areas, and they all touch on signage just a bit. So those have been included in the amendment packet as well. Nothing really to note there. Probably the most prevalent would be the Gateway Corridor overlay. That's with the Eastchester Corridor. It has separate signage standards, and those were not in the sign section. So if you were submitting a sign ordinance or a sign permit, you'd probably think, well, I'm going to look at signage. And if you were in Eastchester, it wasn't there. So we wanted to make that a bit more user-friendly. And so just kind of an update on the review and decision process. The public review and comment, where we had the first the first draft of the ordinance to be released, was May of 2022. We had a public drop-in session in June of 2022, and then a comment period really through June of last year, and it has kind of extended past that. But we got feedback and review from the public. We prepared the draft for the hearing, and then we had the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing last month, and then tonight we're at hopefully adoption. But with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them. This is a text amendment, so the state statutes require that there's a adoption of the consistency and reasonableness statements. And then certainly staff recommends approval of this item, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the item as well by a vote of 8-0 at their January meeting. But I'm happy to take any questions of the council at this point.
Questions for staff before we move forward? Thanks, Mr. Andrews. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak in favor or against this item?
Good evening. My name is Joan Campbell. I work for Fast Signs on Main Street. I live in High Point. Staff did a great job. Consolidating everything makes it much easier. I only have 2 issues, and that's boulevard banner size and regular banner size. They're a little small. I would like not to have people squint while they're driving by and trying to read them. And also, we do have examples of boulevard banners that are much bigger than 2x3. High Point U, the Rockers, the Market Authority. I'd like to at least make a note that it has been brought to the attention and that zoning and I have discussed this, and they would like to possibly review it to make them a little larger and more fair. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else, Ms. Stauber? I see you moving this way.
Thank you. I'm Judy Stalder. This time I'm speaking for Trebic members, 115 Southwest Gate Drive in Greensboro. I want to start by saying that what this process lacked from the very beginning was an empowered steering committee to review and guide the process. At the time, staff said the reasons for that were that they had a limited budget and that they wanted to move quickly. Well, clearly, the time didn't matter for various reasons and things beyond the staff's control. And that being said, generally, it's a good plan. There were a few things that Trebic members commented on. Two that staff has already corrected. One, clarifying the language that ensures that common signage plans that are required for certain developments won't hold up the other plans for those developments. And that language has been corrected and simplified. And two, they have expanded the installation of murals or wall-painted signs from only on the side of a building to now you can have it on two sides of a building. Don't know if that needs to go further. The two comments that we have that have not been addressed, one, we feel like roof signs should be included as an option. They're not allowed in High Point at this time, but there's no reason that they weren't, or no reason given that they weren't included in the new sign ordinance, except that no one had asked for one, and why would they if they weren't allowed? But we think that would add to creativity and flexibility and just something new and different in High Point. Also, we believe that electronic changeable signs should be allowed in gateway corridors. They can be limited, of course, like other signs are in the corridor, but there's no reason not to extend that technology to all of our businesses in High Point. I'd like to end by saying that Trebic believes that any change in regulation or policy should be coupled with a steering committee or at least a task force that has some input into the policy. It just makes sense to have professionals in the industry commenting on the change in regulation and policy. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Dollar. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak on this item?
Can I ask Judy a question real quick?
Sure.
Judy, I'm sorry, so on that second item about a sign option, I didn't hear what the name of that type of sign was.
The electronic changeable
No,
copy
the one right
signs.
before that.
The rooftop.
It was
Roof
right after the
signs.
mural. Rooftop signs,
Yes.
okay. And did anyone give you any reason why that shouldn't be considered?
Just that it hasn't been allowed in the past.
But does it clearly state in our new sign ordinance that it is not allowed? And is there any reason that it's not allowed? I'm just curious, I don't know.
No, it is a good question. Just as staff, it's not a type of sign that we've historically had inquiries about. We do recognize, especially in kind of more of an urban environment, where you've got taller buildings, dense development, that those certainly could be appropriate. So staff is not opposed at taking a look at maybe defining some boundaries where those could be permitted. So I don't have a great answer as to why that wasn't supported at the time, but we would certainly be open to adding it. I think another thing that's certainly helpful is when an applicant or a constituent says, we want to allow this, having some sort of, this is what we'd like to see, maybe some examples from other communities. I know that, I believe it's Raleigh Durham has a pretty good example of how they've instituted it in some of their kind of downtown districts, and we're certainly aware of that.
So changing the wording, I'm just curious, so whoever wants to, so instead of, what if it just didn't say anything about rooftop signs? I mean, just because you don't say you are not allowed to have rooftop signs, doesn't mean everybody's going to want to come out and have. So why even have to use that language in there at all?
Typically, if much like uses in the development ordinance, if you have a use, you are spelling out what uses are permitted and what ones are prohibited. And then a lot of times, if there's kind of a gray area, the director or somebody will need to make a kind of a determination as to whether that should be permitted. And the way that signage ordinances are written across the country, I mean, that's a very common category of signage, so it's common practice to kind of distinguish types of signs, and roof signs are a fairly common, distinguished pretty commonly.
If I may, Mayor,
Yeah, Mr. Williams?
I'm sorry, y'all. When I hear rooftop, the first thing I'm thinking is a Domino's pizza thing. So, I mean, help me understand what that looks like.
Not on the car. Let's see here.
Paint on
Can we
top
go
of
back,
the roof,
Ryan?
Like your flying helicopter.
I mean, I seen like where you had like a.
I know that I think there's
standing sign on
one.
the roof.
Okay.
But I was trying to say, are you talking about like the flat laid?
The bicycle on top of the swing shop?
Yeah.
That'd be a rooftop.
Okay, that's what I was, yeah.
I think Carolina Containers in the southern portion of the city has some really, I mean, they might be from like the 50s or 60s. They're pretty old. But this is like Roanoke, if you drive up north. Roanoke has, I don't know if it's Dr. Pepper or what the signage is. But there's some big ones that they have. So we're talking about signage that's above the roof line, or if it's a kind of a flat roof, it might be on the top of the roof.
In your earlier statement, you said that you just haven't had any
We've had
inquiries about it, not that we don't have any.
correct, yeah, very limited inquiries about that. I can think of one in my time at the city, and that's been it at this point.
Can I ask this, Mayor? This is Councilman Jefferson. So I'm curious, when you say we've had limited inquiries about it, Trebek's making a concern about it. Has Trebek made a concern about it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part?
You mentioned we've had limited inquiries, but Trebek just raised a concern about it. Have you heard them raise that concern prior to this meeting?
Yes, certainly. And one of the things that we've wanted to do is as we've written this, or as city staff has written this ordinance, wanted to make sure that once we had it reviewed by our legal folks, that this really in its form has been months in the past. We've not made any changes to it in the last almost a year now. And it's easy to come back and make some changes to the development ordinance, especially the sign section. So we fully expect that there'll be some tweaks. I had a great conversation with Ms. Campbell last week, where she suggested, what the dimensions of some of these banners should be. So that's helpful to us, and we're certainly open to that. So we expect that to happen. But yeah, I can only think of one actual kind of applicant for a sign permit that said, can I do a roof sign? And they chose to do something a bit different on the front of their facade. But the topic of roof signs has really not been a huge discussion until kind of the final form of the ordinance.
Yeah, Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd like to continue. So I think where my thinking is going, I've got thoughts, but I've also got questions here, Mr. Andrews.
Sure.
I think I'm curious about what Judy said, in that there was no steering committee, and I can't verify, but Judy, you made a comment that the answer to why we didn't have a steering committee was that we didn't have a budget for it, and we didn't have time because we were moving quickly. I don't know if that was the line, and I don't know if you can attest to if that was the reason that was officially given why we didn't have a steering committee. I'm curious about that. The timeline piece is interesting because you just said this hasn't been touched in a year. So I think, heck, I don't want to go tick for tack on what was said and what wasn't said. I think what's on my mind is what was the level of involvement we had with folks from our development community, folks from our business community, folks who we need to weigh in on this. If there's been some considerable involvement and that we just haven't heard about yet, do you mind expounding on that?
Sure. The decision of how the process was to be laid out predated my time here, and was really at the direction of former department leadership. And so I don't have any firsthand knowledge of why that process was not followed or adhered to. I mean, there's certainly nothing that requires an ordinance amendment to have a steering committee. That may be policy, but policies change over time. So I can't give firsthand testimony as to why that was the case for the sign ordinance. The process certainly was, I hope, was inclusive of the development community. Certainly with, we had a dedicated project website for the sign ordinance. We had some open houses. The time that predated my time with the department, 2018, 2019, I know there were a number of public meetings and kind of workshops that were held. But yeah, we tried to send out anytime that we had a new ordinance or a new update to our draft to the development community or those that were signed up for, from that original kind of stakeholder group.
Yeah, thank you for that, and I appreciate you letting me hear timeline here too, because I think I'm recognizing, as you said, some of this goes back really several years before some of us were even here on council. I think, Mayor, if I can just offer a thought out loud, I think it's a thought that several of us have shared, and I know High Point's been working on it, and I hope we continue to work on being the kind of government and the kind of community that recognizes we have to partner with other folks in order for our city to move forward. And that partnership, in terms of it being the kind of symbiotic nature that it is, that means that at all times, if we can, getting that kind of feedback, I think is so critical before we ever get to the dais like this, because otherwise we're gonna have these conversations. And my mindset is always gonna be, even if there's some good reason why we couldn't have done something, I'm curious about why we're not having the conversation. And so, Mr. Andrews, this isn't directed towards you, to be clear. You just said you weren't here perhaps for all that. I think I'm sharing this thought out loud so that way going forward, that we can continue to be the kind of government body that puts forward the importance of feedback, the importance of engagement, the importance of trying to get some form of buy-in. I think reasonable folks can understand if we say we're not going to do this and here's our sound reason why. I think reasonable folks can understand that. But I know I always stand on the side of us like leaning into engagement and leaning into that kind of partnership. Because truth be told, we can make all the policies in the world and have no tax revenue. And then those policies don't mean a hill of beans if we have no tax revenue.
Sure.
So what we don't want to be, what I know I just heard from someone a few days ago is, hey, is High Point still not a friendly place to play in terms of development? And I want to make sure that at all costs, we're doing what we can. And again, Mr. Andrews, this is not directed at you because this is prior to your time. And I imagine that at some point, this will probably get back to more folks who are amongst our teams. I know we're working on it, and I hope we keep working on it, and that if we're not taking action on this tonight, can there actually be some intentional, I mean, I guess the open house was several years ago. Can there be another one where we can sit down with some folks and maybe hear from them on that?
I actually have a suggestion. I have quite a few concerns actually about this, to the point that I don't want to keep y'all here till tomorrow. So what I would like to suggest is that we place this item in pending and that we schedule one or more work sessions to talk about, to go over these changes. I hate to say line by line, but kind of line by line, and see. I think the way we're headed is the right direction. I don't envision us rewriting this thing, because I think probably 95% of it is the way we need to go. But I, for one, have a lot of questions and concerns about several things, and I think it would be better if we maybe get around the table in the fishbowl and have staff there and have it open and be able to get some of that input and for us to be able to dive into this a little more. So I would like to make a motion to put this in pending and ask the staff to schedule at least one work session, and if we need more, we'll just leave it in pending until we're satisfied.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion, a second. Any discussion on that motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to,
go ahead.
I just wanted to, this is Councilman Holmes, just wanted to make a point that I think opportunities, we also have to be a government that seizes opportunities. There was a lapse of a year where we could have heard from many of the, I'm sure they raised those things. So I want to make sure that we're not missing opportunities to partner with our community leaders to make sure that we're getting the best product that we possibly can.
Certainly, yeah, and a group that comes to mind that I failed to mention, I mean, we discussed with the Realtor Group, I forget what High Point Realtors is, High Point Realty Association. So, I mean, we tried to get this out. I don't know that it's a lack of effort on staff's part. Signage is not the the most appealing topic of all, but certainly what staff is ready and willing to work with you. We do hope that we come away with something. And I know the legal landscape certainly drew the process out, and I hope that doesn't happen with all the changes that we might make. So.
Councilman Jones, I think you want to be heard.
No, I definitely support the motion. I just would hope that staff will get the word out to the business community. I know Trivia will be involved, and any small business owners in the area, because signs are really a lifeblood to the small business community. It's how you get your name out there in the beginning. People see a new sign pop up, and then they decide to stop in and see what your food tastes like or whatever. But it's a fine line when you're in the government telling small business owners, this is how you should market your business, this is what we think is best for you, what's not. And kind of gets a lot of people upset when it gets a little too far overreach. And I own 7 businesses here in High Point, and I don't like government telling me what to do and how I need to market and what I can't do. If Michael and I want to go and spin some signs on Eastchester and go help out, that's a way of advertising, and it brings people in. And who is the government to tell me that that's acceptable or not acceptable until it encroaches on somebody else's rights? So I think we need to make sure those stakeholders are in there. The small business community needs to be heard. No offense, but more than staff, because they know what's best for them more than you do. And so I encourage them to get that word out so they cannot say they weren't heard. They can't say they didn't have the notice for this meeting, because this thing's been going a long time. We've had a lot of emails and discussions about the sign ordinance. I feel like it's been our entire time on city council. And for closure, I do think we need to get this thing to something we can vote on, knowing good and well if trends change and certain signs becomes more popular or whatever, we can amend it. But I don't want this to drag on for the rest of the year. I'd like to get us a few more amendments to it if possible, get it passed, and give the business community, here's what you can expect to do.
Yeah, I'd like to see us work pretty quickly on it and have it done within the next month or so.
Yeah.
That would be great. And Mr. Mayor, sorry, if I could just clarify one thing, because I recognize I said a lot of words earlier. I want to be clear, staff, we appreciate how much time invested on this. I don't want it to be lost. We appreciate you all.
Yeah.
And certainly where there are those opportunities to ensure safety, right? I'm curious about that gateway one, Judy, because I'm curious about safety on that, to be honest. But I think we can talk about it, right? Again, it's how we come together, it's how we partner, it's how we make those compromises needful for us to continue growing, but do it in the best interest of as many High Pointers as possible. So I just want to be clear. Staff, thank you, and I look forward to our next steps on it.
Last thing, and I'll be quick. And Pat, please leave the room. What I want to make real clear is that just from my perspective, the organizations that I've spoke with, even, I can't remember the name of the youth or the young, whoever, but I remember that they had buy-in on this. I remember Market Authority had spoke about it, and other local groups, especially in the Central Business District. So I'm a little off on it, because I thought you did do a good job on a lot of the outreach, because they did reach a lot of people. They were talking to me about it, and then I was maybe going to a few staffers asking for just little tidbits of that. So, but I'm with it. I really do, because I thought this is a big pill to swallow, and we need to kind of get a little more detailed on how we arrange it. But I didn't want it to kind of come off like I was conflicting with what was just said. I agree that we do need to look at it closer, but I do appreciate the work that you did. I know how it feels when you try to do public outreach and you get what you get.
And Mr. Mayor and Council, just, staff certainly has looked at a lot of things, how to calculate, how to figure out what the calculations should be or types of signs that should be permitted. So, we have done a lot of research in the last, the time that we spent writing this. So any, kind of thoughts that you guys have that you can share with staff prior to getting to that meeting, we can at least maybe provide some background as to why what's in the ordinance made it in there, would be helpful to us and could help the process move along quickly and give you guys some more information to consider as we go forward.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think it's important for us to get a happy place on this because, you know, text amendments are,
Complicated.
yeah, they're not, I don't want to go ahead and pass something and then we come back 6 months later and we're already doing text amendments on it. I'd like to really try to nail it down as best we can. And I know there are always going to be text amendments, but to ask other people or to ask our staff to have to go through the process of doing these text amendments, when we have the opportunity to kind of do it once and do it right, that would be my preference. And let's just, you know, let's take our time. Let's try to get it right. So, is there anyone else who'd like to be heard on the motion?
Can I add one thing real quick?
Yes.
I think, Chris, as you're going through this, and yes, staff's done an amazing job, is like out of our retreat, you know, one of the big things that came out was like being real design oriented. So, you know, I think when you're looking through some of the things, anything that might like hinder creativity, so anyway, so just kind of think about some of those things that we came out of retreat and see if there's any places in the ordinance that was like, well, maybe this is a little bit too strict and kind of hinders that. And, you know, we want to be super, super business friendly. And like Victor said, small businesses and stuff. So just if y'all see something that, well, maybe that's a little bit, you know, that's something to maybe look at.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, there's a motion and a second to place this item in pending. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Next is a confirmation of the appointment of Julian Weathers to fill an unexpired term effective immediately with the Guilford County City Insurance Advisory Committee. It will, be effective immediately with the term expiring December 21, 2023, and the reappointment of Linwood Roach effective immediately with the term expiring December 21, 2025. And I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
Thank you.
Does anyone, motion and a second, anyone like to be heard on this item?
Sure. You know, a lot of our boards and commissions are easy. You just find somebody willing and that's it. Well, this is one of those boards, Jay and I were talking over email, it's more difficult to fill because you really have to have a business background in that field to be worth anything on the board. And Julian happens to be a Ward 5 resident. We hadn't ever met in person, but when I saw his application come in, I told Jay we were going to grab lunch. I've been in insurance 20 years this year. And so there's a lot of people that got their license but don't know anything. So I wanted to see if he actually knew a lot about the industry. He's the real deal. We had lunch over at Odie's, and he's got a heart for helping serve High Point, and his knowledge of the insurance industries is about as good as any I've ever met. So I immediately emailed Mayor Wagner and said I'd like to recommend this applicant, and so he's here tonight. If y'all want to meet him or say anything, say hello after the meeting or whatever, but I recommend this.
Well, he's proved one thing, he's patient.
Yeah.
Anyone else like to be heard on this item? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
Mayor, I'm not sure if this
Yes.
is appropriate. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to add an item that's not on the agenda.
Okay, there's a motion to suspend the rules. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Anyone like to be heard on the motion? Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Floor is yours, Councilman Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to make a motion for the next mayor pro tem, but before I start, I'd like to first thank the current Mayor Pro Tem Monica Peters for her commitment to the city. I'd like to say that she took an uncanny approach to the spot where she actually reached out to the school of government, and she did research, and for me it was just Mayor Wagner calling me, telling me, can you get up and take that morning meeting? I can't get there. Big difference. So I really want to say, I appreciate the work that you put in, and it's shown across the city in the different groups that's mentioned you. I would have said more about you, but you beat me to Brits Water, so I'm about to try here. So in that case, I'll make the motion to make Wesley Hudson, Councilman Hudson, the next mayor pro tem of the city of High Point.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to appoint Councilman Wesley Hudson as our new mayor pro tem. I will jump in too and echo what Councilman Williams has said. I think Councilman Peters has done a great job as mayor pro tem. She's always been there when I need her to step in for me, and just, you know, her enthusiasm for the city, and it's been a good year, or a little more than a year, but she's just such a cheerleader for High Point, and part of the mayor's job and part of the mayor pro tem's job is to be a cheerleader for High Point. So I really appreciate, I will echo what Councilman Williams said. I really appreciate what you've done and your dedication to the position, and I really do appreciate it. Is there anyone else who'd like to be heard on this item before we vote?
I'd like to say exactly the same thing, just exemplary job. I mean, Mayor Pro Tem has been exemplary. Commend you for a job well done.
Thank you. It's been an honor and privilege to serve.
Yes, Councilman
I'm
Jefferson.
just going to say here to all the comments. Seriously, Monica, thank you.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. All right, we have some minutes to be approved before we adjourn. I think they're the minutes for council meeting on February 6th, community development from the 7th, and the High Point, and our special meeting on the 13th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Anyone have any corrections, any comment? Okay, all in favor of approval of those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes, and this will be our last meeting for February. Anyone have any announcements before we adjourn?
Yes, this Saturday, 1 o'clock, the Marines that we honored this evening will be doing at the High Point Theater, High Point Museum. We'll be doing a little ceremony for them. Be some Marines that we've invited from all around the Triad. They're going to be showing up to honor them, so cool opportunity.
Excellent. Anyone else with an announcement? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously, and we are adjourned.